Please don't tell, full episode. Hello besties, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also, share this video with your loved ones and turn on post notifications, so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you. As you do so, sit back and relax as we dive into this story. Please don't tell, he breathed into Nora's ear as she stood at the humming copy machine after midnight in 2001. Her hand trembled over the stamped "failed" on the bridge inspection. She slid in the clean version Ethan Caldwell had brought. The toner drum turned like a slow heartbeat. The green bar swept across the glass. The decision was made before the page even landed in the tray. The shop buzzed under cheap fluorescence. The floor smelled like hot plastic and paper dust. Nora watched the copy spill out, perfect and shameless, the red stamp gone, the signature replaced, the margins neat. In the corner, almost invisible unless you knew to look, the machine ghosted a watermark, her name, the date, the minute. She pressed a fingertip to it as if she could smudge herself off the page. Ethan's reflection stood behind hers in the front window, a dark shape with neat hair and a city badge clipped to his belt. He set his hand on her shoulder, the way someone checks the temperature of a stove. "They're going to close it and fix it," he said. "We just need a week. Maybe 2. The council's dragging their feet and the grant's on a clock. This buys us time." "You said it failed," Nora said. Her voice came out thin. She was 18. She had never stayed up past midnight for anything more dangerous than cramming for finals. "You told me it failed." "It failed paperwork," he said, low and good at sounding calm. "Not physics." The inspector overreacted. "He always does. I'll have crews on it by Monday. Please don't tell anyone. Please." He said it gently, like he was asking her to keep a birthday secret. Like it was the kind of thing decent people did for each other. He squeezed her hand once, in thanks, and she let him. They left by the alley door. The town slept around them, porch lights glowing, sprinklers clicking. On the river you could hear the seniors at their bonfire, music echoing off the bluff. Ethan walked her to her car and leaned in the open window. "You did a good thing," he said. "We'll make it right." She drove toward the orange flicker at the bend, toward the voices and the heat. The old iron bridge crouched in the dark beyond the sandbar, trusses stitched with rivets that had seen 100 winters. You could always taste rust when you crossed it, even with the windows shut. Nora parked behind a string of pickups and the one dented sedan her friend Kayla's brother drove. Sparks from the bonfire rose and vanished. Someone handed her a soda. The music switched to a slow song and the river hushed to listen. Out on the county road, a pickup turned toward the bridge and rolled onto the first span, tires whispering over grating. She felt the wrongness before she understood it. A noise like a groan, deep and living. Then the second sound, a sharp report, metal cracking in a way that made the back of her teeth hurt. Kids shouted. Someone laughed, nervous, and then screamed. The truck's headlights leaped, the front end dropped, and the world folded, simple as a piece of paper bent in half. Nora ran. The fire's light swung wildly, throwing shadows like shrapnel. She reached the bank and plunged in without thinking. The river stole her breath with the cold. She grabbed for the slick shape of a shoulder and caught skin, then sleeve, fingers digging, slipping. "Hold on," she yelled, though the current pulled her words sideways. Hands on the bank hauled, and she felt the small victory of a body sliding over rocks, a cough, the thin edge between now and never. She turned for whoever was next and her palm met a wrist and slipped again. The water turned that person away from her as if choosing, and the river kept them. By morning the bridge lay in a crooked mouth of girders, one end sunk, the other pinned. Helicopters beat the air. The road closed. Sirens came and went. There were names on everyone's lips, the town made lists and checked them against kitchen tables. Days burned away. There were caskets carried by boys who tried not to look down. There were casseroles cooling on countertops and women who didn't sleep. People said the rain last winter had done it. People said teenagers had overloaded the bridge with their stupid truck. People said the town never fixed anything until it broke. People said everything and nothing you could argue with. Ethan caught Nora in the hallway of the municipal building after one of the sad meetings. "We're moving fast," he whispered, quick, eyes already sliding past her to a councilman. "I told you, we're on it." "Thank you." The word sounded like a coin. She swallowed it. She enrolled in EMT classes because she needed something to do with the tight heat behind her ribs. She learned how to make a tourniquet out of a belt and a Bic pen, how to set her jaw so her hands could be calm. When people asked why, she said she wanted to help. It was true enough. She put the night of the copies in her pocket like a stone and imagined it would get lighter with use. 24 years later the sky went the wrong color again. Smoke turned it into the inside of a bruise. A late-season wildfire had come down out of the state forest and licked the edges of Elkhorn Ridge, then crossed the access road like it had paid a toll. The river was low and fast, stripped back to ribs. The air tasted metallic, pennies on the tongue. Sirens stacked on sirens. Nora, now a seasoned paramedic, worked a triage line at the riverside campground where evacuees clustered with cats in carriers and hurried suitcases. She taped a dressing across a child's shin and told him he was brave. She reset a woman's inhaler and told her to breathe like she was fogging a mirror. Boots thudded. Radios crackled. Ash fell soft as lint. "Ma'am," a teenage boy said, voice cracking as if the day had aged him and also failed to. He pointed toward the river's exposed footing where the old bridge had once met the bank. "What is that?" Nora followed his finger. The river had chewed away all the soft stuff and left the ugly behind, concrete stairs the water had cut, a slab of footing slick with algae, and something bolted to it, half sunk and crusted, the color of old pennies, a metal box chained to the rebar like a warning. She blinked. The box didn't look like debris. It looked attached on purpose. "I'll take a look," she said, finishing the bandage on his mother's forearm. "You two stay here. Drink water." Between calls she waded in, boots slipping, knees remembering a younger river. The chain was fused with scale, the padlock a barnacle of rust. "Need a pry," she called to a firefighter packing hose. He handed over a Halligan bar without breaking stride. The tool was cold and certain in her hands. She wedged the adze under the lip and leaned her weight into it. The metal moaned and the lid came up an inch, then two, flakes sloughing into the current. Smoke drifted through the cottonwoods. For a second she smelled not ash but something older, wet paper, oil, river rot. Inside lay folders wrapped in a contractor bag that had given up trying to be plastic. Photos with white borders stuck to one another and then let go with gentle sounds. A stack of handwritten notes bound by a rubber band that had gone to dust. On top, like it had been put there last, an inspection report. A different signature. A different date. The same columns and measurements as the one she had copied, but the handwriting had the clean, upright look of someone who learned to write with a fountain pen. Nora's gloved thumb found a paperclip. Under it, a Polaroid, the rectangle of a report with the red block letters she still saw in dreams, failed, hard and ordinary across the page. She felt the floor under her become years again. She tilted the photo, and her stomach turned. In the lower corner, where the copier at Ridge Print and Ship stamped a ghost line on everything after midnight, a faint dot matrix bruise of characters appeared, Nora, the date, the time. She saw her own name like a whisper. Not a memory. A record. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. "Hey," someone shouted behind her, and the river came back. Evacuees milling, a woman crying into her sleeve, a firefighter flicking a tarp over crates of bottled water. Nora slid the files back into the box, keeping the Polaroid in her palm until she forced herself to let it go. She eased the lid down so it kissed but did not seal. The chain hung from it like a throat. "Nora," her partner called from the shore. "We've got a chest pain near the dock." She waded out, shoved the Halligan into the firefighter's hands, and ran. Her legs remembered the river differently than they remembered ladders and stairs. They shook. She steadied herself with the rhythm of work. Oxygen. Vitals. Reassurance. The day narrowed to one set of lungs at a time. Hours later, when the worst had been sorted into tents and transport, when the sun had turned to a red disk and then flattened against smoke, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. It buzzed again. She wiped ash off the screen with the back of her wrist and swiped. "Ms. Hale." A man said, voice careful. "My name is Mateo Ruiz. I'm a reporter with the Ledger. I'm calling about the bridge." She didn't know she could feel her pulse in her gums. The world seemed to lean. "What bridge?" she said, and heard the lie in it. "The one that fell," he said, no judgment in it, just the fact. She watched the river drag a long branch past the footing where the box sat like a buried thought. She could still taste toner, 24 years old and fresh. "I'm at work," Nora said. "I understand," he said. "I think someone wanted what was in that lockbox to be found. I think you might know why." A siren rose at the highway and dipped. Someone laughed too loudly near the coffee urn. A girl petted a rabbit in a carrier with 2 fingers, slow as prayer. "Not now," Nora said. "I'll try again," he said. "If that's all right." She ended the call without saying yes or no. The screen threw her reflection up at her. A face scored by sun and smoke, hair tucked under a cap, eyes rimmed with the day. In the corner of her mind the faint watermark glowed like a burn. She looked at the footing again. The river knocked softly at the box, as if reminding it of a promise. Her phone buzzed once more in her hand, the same number returning, patient as breath. She didn't answer. She slipped the phone into her pocket, felt the weight of it against her thigh, and turned back toward the tents, toward the voices calling her name. The siren swelled, and the night came down, and the sound of water filled the space around whatever words she might have said. Ash clung to the windshield like a second skin. Nora drove with the window cracked, breathing smoke-thin air that tasted like coins. Her wipers squeaked over the dust, useless. When she turned onto her street the neighborhood looked dipped in chalk, lawns gray, porch rails gray, the moon a smudged thumbprint. She killed the engine and stood for a second with her hands on the wheel, letting the quiet rise. Her phone, face down on the passenger seat, vibrated once more and went still. The porch light picked out an envelope on the mat, cream against the soot. She nearly stepped on it. No return address. Inside, a photocopy of the clean inspection she had made 24 years ago, the one that had made her stomach cave. In the corner, the machine's faint watermark was circled in red, the time like a fingerprint. A yellow sticky note clung to the margin. "We should talk. Mr." She pressed her thumb to the note and felt the tacky glue give a little, like a pulse. Then she slid everything back into the envelope, locked her door twice, and leaned her forehead to the cool wood until she could breathe slowly again. She slept a few hours and dreamed of paper floating downriver like leaves that never got wet. By morning, the wind had shifted but the town still smelled of burned pine and wet canvas. Nora pulled on her uniform and drove to the station past closed windows and taped doorframes. Outside the bay, a man waited with a leather messenger bag and posture that tried not to be in the way. He had the envelope's neatness in person, that careful square of a sticky note turned into a jawline. "Miss Hale?" he asked, stepping back so she could pass. "Mateo Ruiz. I called last night." She kept walking. "I have a shift." "I know." He kept pace for 2 steps and then stopped. "I'm not here to ambush you. I brought something you can look at when you're ready." He held out a paper folder. Inside were printouts with highlighted lines, invoices, dates, company names that looped back to other names. No bid contracts awarded the week after the collapse. A shell company with a P.O. box 2 doors down from Ethan Caldwell's old office. On one sheet he'd underlined a line item so hard the paper had gone shiny. "I'm not saying what it means," he said. "I'm saying it's there." "I'm on duty," she said again, because the alternative was to acknowledge the way her hands warmed, the small electric flick in her chest that felt too close to hope and too close to danger. He slid a card across the folder. "You don't owe me answers. You might owe them to yourself. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button." She handed the folder back. The card she kept. He nodded, like he'd expected no more and still respected the no. By noon, the evacuation center had filled back up. Families shuffled between cots and coffee urns. Volunteers cried out names and checked boxes on clipboards. Nora stood behind a table handing out spacer devices for inhalers when a woman set a plastic grocery bag down and smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. "Couple extra inhalers from my clinic," she said. "Don't worry, they're not expired." Nora knew the voice before the face, the cadence before the features. Kayla had cut her hair since high school, it rested against her jaw in a clean line. Her hands were as competent as Nora remembered. The bag rustled with small boxes. "Thanks," Nora said, which was safe and insufficient. They sorted the inhalers into sizes, their fingers moving in a practiced rhythm that used to belong to dances and cheer practice and skirt hems stitched while they talked about leaving. The smell of albuterol mingled with smoke. "Do you ever dream about it?" Kayla asked, eyes on the bag. Nora lined up 2 boxes until the words on them made a clean column. "Not anymore," she said, and felt the lie touch the back of her teeth like a hot fork. Across town, Mateo sat on the bumper of his hatchback and scrolled through a list of names ending in LLC. He rubbed ash off his screen and looked up as a woman in a yellow safety vest approached, clamping a notebook under one arm. She had soot on her cheekbone like war paint and safety glasses on her head. "You Ruiz?" she asked. "That's me. Sienna Park. The fire chief said you were asking about the bridge." "I'm asking about rot," he said. "And bolts." She snorted softly, the kind of laugh engineers give when you've hit the right nerve. "Rot is a metaphor and a condition. You want the condition. Counterfeit fasteners fail under cyclic load. Paint hides corrosion but doesn't reverse it. A marginal structure can perform for decades until it doesn't, and then everyone acts surprised. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. He flipped his notebook open. "If I had photographs. Notes. Old measurements. Could you tell me if what failed was inevitable or helped along? I can tell you whether it makes sense," she said. "Bring me what you've got. If you got it lawfully, I'll look lawfully. If you didn't, I can't touch it." Her eyes were patient and unsentimental. People like to confuse those categories. Back at the relief tent, a hush ran through the aisle as Ethan Caldwell swept in with a small entourage and a smile calibrated to look tired and game. He was taller now or simply held himself higher. He shook hands. He posed with a bored golden retriever for a photograph. When he reached Nora, he folded her into a hug that happened to face the nearest camera, then stepped back, his palms on her arms. "Still saving us," he said warmly. "You've always been one of the good ones." "I'm working," she said, and he nodded like she'd confirmed his thesis. He leaned in, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "People remember who kept them calm back then," he said. "Let's not scare them now." It was a kindness and a warning, and it fell into her like a coin into a slot. She felt herself tilt. He was gone before she could answer, trailing the photographer. The day drained itself. She went home when the schedule said she could, put her bag on the counter, and found 2 tires sagging on her car by the curb. Each had a neat slit near the sidewall, no drama to it, just the certainty of a future not happening tonight. She laughed once, without humor, because of course. Inside, her deadbolt took 3 tries to turn, the metal sticking against metal as if the house had decided to keep her out. She filed no report. She made tea she didn't drink. She took the envelope from the drawer where she had stashed it and slid the contents into a tote. Then she called the library, and when the night custodian answered, she asked if the small conference room was free. He recognized her name and said he'd leave the side door unlatched. Sienna arrived in work boots and a clean shirt, hair wet from a fast shower. They spread the files on a laminate table under humming lights. The lockbox documents were damp around the edges and smelled of river. Sienna handled them like artifacts, not relics. "Handwriting's consistent here," she said, tapping the inspector's neat letters. "Measurements are within expected tolerances for a structure that age. This," she held up a photo of a truss joint, pitted and painted, "is cosmetic cover. Paint over corrosion. You can keep water out, you can't paint back the metal that's gone. See these fasteners? The head marks are wrong for the spec. Could mean counterfeit. Could mean someone bought cheap. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button." Nora listened like a student, the way she had sat through EMT lectures about the rhythm of a heart that didn't want to be persuaded to keep beating. Facts, then implications. A story you could tell without adjectives. Sienna stacked the pages into an order that made sense. If these were presented together, a reasonable person would conclude the risk was clear and ignored, she said. Whoever hid these didn't want a reasonable person to have the set. Nora's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I found archived pager backups from a defunct service. It looks like a recovered voicemail from 01 tied to the mayor's office. I need one on-record comment to justify pulling the audio. Mr. She typed and erased 3 replies before sending, "I can't. Not yet." He wrote back, "Understood. If I do this, I'll own it. You don't have to." She didn't delete the thread. She put the phone face down and felt calmer for not pretending it didn't exist. The next afternoon, Kayla found her in the hallway behind the vaccination clinic where Nora had gone to pick up donated saline. The overhead light made Kayla's hair look almost copper. Her mouth was tight. "I heard you met with the reporter," she said. Nora considered lying and let the "If there's something you know," Kayla said, each word set down like she was building a small, strong thing, "don't make me grieve the wrong story." "I don't know what you think I know," Nora said, which was almost true and exactly not true at all. Kayla's eyes searched her face the way they had searched a crowd for a brother coming toward a friend he would not reach. "I don't want apologies," she said. "I want the truth to stop moving. I made a mistake a long time ago," Nora said. She felt the sentence leave her like blood. "I thought it would help until help came. Then make a different choice now," Kayla said softly, and she walked away without looking back. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. That night the town quieted. The fire line held. The power flickered once and stayed. Nora washed dishes she had not used and let them air dry on the rack. Her laptop chimed. An email from an address she didn't recognize, subject line, audio. She clicked. A small gray player opened. The timestamp laid the year bare. There was a beat of hiss, the grain of an old machine, and then a man's voice, lower and faster than the one that had told her kind lies, whispering, "It's handled. Please don't tell anyone what you saw." She set her hand on the counter to steady herself. The phrase didn't creep, it struck. It came from a hallway with beige carpet and a copy of the town seal on the wall and people who had keys to every door. It tasted like toner. It tasted like the river. She played it again to be sure it said what it said and not what she needed it to say. It said what it said. She reached for her phone and scrolled to a number she hadn't used in months, the one they gave to volunteers to reserve the high school gym for PTA nights and banquets. When the woman answered, Nora heard chairs moving in the background, the hollow of a large room. "This is Nora Hale," she said. "I need to book the gym for a town hall. As soon as possible." "For what purpose?" the woman asked, pen scratching already. "To tell the truth," Nora said. Her voice didn't shake. "I'm done being quiet." Folding chairs filled the high school gym in neat, nervous rows. Smoke turned the sunset the color of weak tea through the high windows, and the lights hummed like a hive. On the dais, the mayor sat flanked by council members and a deputy who watched the crowd the way men watch traffic, gauging speed, looking for sudden moves. Nora stood halfway down the aisle with a small recorder warm in her pocket and the lockbox at her feet. The metal had kept the chill from the night and now sweated against the varnished floor. Ethan rose first, jacket crisp, tie a shade calmer than the room. He talked about resilience, about the way a town holds hands when the hills burn and the river runs mean. He called the fire an act of God, the collapse an act of time. He said the word community until it sounded like a brand. When he looked down the aisle and found her, he smiled, benevolent as a pastor. "Our heroes know better than anyone that panic kills," he said, and the crowd nodded out of habit, because the sentence was true in one sense and wrong in the one that mattered. In the back row, Mateo rested a forearm along the top of a folded chair and met Nora's eyes. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't tell her to stand. He gave a small nod like a door cracking open. Nora lifted the recorder from her pocket and felt the thumb will click under her skin. She stepped into the aisle and the sound of her own footsteps startled her. The lockbox knocked once against the floor as she moved and a few heads turned, following the sound rather than her. She reached the mic and felt the cheap metal shiver. Her voice came out thinner than she'd hoped and steadier than she'd feared. "Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. I have something you should hear," she said. She pressed play. The gym's acoustics gave the old audio a thin echo, like it was calling from a hallway. A hiss, a clunk, and then a younger man's voice, pitched low and urgent, "It's handled. Please don't tell anyone what you saw." The sentence passed over the seats and down the walls. 100 of people inhaled in different ways and left one sound. A chair leg scraped. Kayla, 3 rows from the aisle, gripped the edge of her seat with both hands and didn't blink. Nora didn't look at Ethan. She looked at the crowd and spoke to them the way she spoke to patients when there was no time for bedside lies. "I worked at Ridge Print the year the bridge fell. On the night it fell, I was asked to make a clean copy of a failed inspection report. I did it. My name is in the corner of the page, the machine puts it there after midnight. I knew it, and I did it anyway because I believed the person who brought it to me when he said he needed time to fix it. That person was Ethan Caldwell." A murmur ran through the room, not loud, like wind lifting paper. She let it pass over and kept her hands flat on the podium so they wouldn't try to comfort themselves. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to look at the evidence," she said. She pointed to the lockbox at her feet. "These are the notes, the photographs, the measurements the original inspector made. They were found during the fire, chained to the footing at the old bridge site. The ink is older than the fire. The dates are clear. The handwriting is consistent. I brought them to an independent engineer because I wanted someone who doesn't share our last names to tell me what they mean." She stepped back. Sienna rose from the aisle and walked to the mic with a spiral notebook tucked under her arm. Her voice had the calm of someone used to being doubted and too busy to let it matter. "I'm Sienna Park. I volunteer on the fire line. I also investigate failures for a living," she said. "I reviewed the documents Ms. Hale found, along with photographs of the discovery site taken by firefighters at the time of retrieval. The chain of custody from that moment to tonight includes those firefighters, Ms. Hale, myself, and the librarian who supervised our use of the conference room. The materials describe corrosion at critical joints and list fastener head marks inconsistent with the specified bolts. Paint appears to have been applied over corrosion rather than the corrosion being mitigated. A structure in that condition does not fail because of a single night. It fails because known risks are not addressed. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Ethan leaned toward his mic. "This is a fabrication," he said, his voice warm with outrage, like he'd been asked to taste a lie. "A doctored audio file and some papers dragged from a river aren't." "It's not doctored," Mateo said from the back, not shouting, simply putting a plank on the floor. "The audio came from a pager backup recovered from a defunct service provider. I filed a request, and their forensic tech provided an affidavit. If you want to challenge that, we can do it under oath." A man in a denim jacket raised his hand and then stood without waiting to be recognized. He spoke to the room, not the dais. "Name's Russell Clark," he said. "Welded on the county crews 29 years. 2 months before the bridge went, we were told to paint over soft spots on the east truss. I said we needed to plate it or shut it. The foreman said, just make it look good. He paid me cash the next day out of a metal box in the office. I never got cash for county work. When I asked who I should put on my time card, he told me not to put it on my time card." He looked at Mateo. "That company you got on your sheet, the one with the P.O. box on Birch. That's where the cash envelope had a return address." The room held still. The folding chairs stopped creaking. Even the lights sounded louder. Ethan found his smile again, but it didn't fit right. "We can all tell stories," he said. "We can all take advantage of tragedy to score points. I will not allow panic to rewrite history." Kayla stood then. She didn't look at Nora. She looked at the dais, at the place where decisions had gotten made and packaged as inevitabilities. Her voice, when it came, had no tremor left. "We keep calling it an accident so we can sleep," she said. "I would like to sleep." Something in the room shifted at that, the small tilt that comes before a landslide. People who had come for reassurance found themselves wanting a ledger. Heads turned toward the lockbox as if weight could be measured by gaze. A woman in a navy suit at the side of the gym cleared her throat and stepped forward. She introduced herself as an attorney from the state's public integrity unit, here because too many people had called her office to stay away. She didn't raise her voice. "Given the materials described and the testimony presented," she said, "we are opening an investigation into procurement fraud, evidence tampering, and negligent homicide related to the bridge collapse of 2001. We will be issuing subpoenas. We ask that all parties preserve any documents, recordings, and communications relevant to these matters." The deputy at the dais leaned toward Ethan, who tried to wave him off like a waiter. The deputy didn't move his hand. He spoke quietly. Ethan nodded too fast, then stood, trying to appear as if he were leading the way when he was being escorted. He kept his chin up for the cameras. The door at the side of the gym banged once behind him and then softened into the hallway. Don't forget to like and drop a comment. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. The room didn't erupt. It exhaled. Some people cried, and others stared at their hands like they'd never noticed them before. Sienna packed her notebook. Mateo slid his phone into his pocket and rubbed the back of his neck like it hurt. Nora picked up the lockbox. It felt lighter than it had an hour ago and heavier than anything she'd ever carried. Outside, the gym's fluorescent overhang buzzed like summer. Moths battered themselves against the plastic. The night had cleared, ash pushed north by a new wind. Kayla waited near the bike rack, arms folded tight against her ribs. "You took too long," she said. "I know," Nora said. Kayla studied her face as if she were learning a new person from an old outline. "But you didn't stay silent." They stood without saying more. No hug. The air between them was the kind that finally moves after months of stillness, not warm, not cold, clean enough to taste. When Kayla left, she touched Nora's sleeve with 2 fingers, a small benediction, and then she was walking into the parking lot where taillights stitched a slow red pattern toward the road. Nora drove to the river before going home. Dawn was already thinking about the horizon. The fire line on the ridge glowed dull and tired. The footing where the lockbox had been found looked like bone. She slid down the bank, knees dampening, and knelt in the silt. Field daisies grew thin and stubborn near the path. She picked 3 and set them against the concrete, white on gray. The flowers looked like small, honest faces. She took out her phone and opened the audio one last time. She listened to the hiss, then the voice. It no longer sounded like an order or a prayer. It sounded like evidence. After it finished, she pressed delete. Not to pretend it hadn't existed. To stop carrying it like a charm. From her pocket she drew a small notebook with a red elastic. She wrote the names of the dead on the first page, carefully, the way you write on a cast so it will hold. When she finished, she closed the book. The river slid past, brown and intent, heading wherever it had been heading long before any of them stood on its banks and asked it to witness. She stood and brushed the silt from her palms. Smoke had thinned into a taste she could almost ignore. In town, somewhere, a siren wound up and leveled out. She turned toward it and toward the people who would need her, toward statements and subpoenas and whatever came when a story stopped being a rumor and became a record. The sun pushed through a seam in the hills and lit the far bend like a promise, not of ease, but of daylight. She shouldered the lockbox and walked back the way she had come. Hey besties, thanks so much for sticking around till the end. If you felt something, learned something, or just enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. See you next time, bye.